Hi, I'm going to talk about the 4-day week. And as an idea, it arouses general sympathy, but very often is portrayed as being harmful to the economy. Yes, we would all be happy, but the economy is the price we have to pay for the good life. In my book, Friday's the New Saturday, I want to change this narrative and explain why the 4-day week will actually improve rather than harm our economies. I'm going to start with the words of one almost unanimously regarded modern economist. And he wrote, "Progress comes from technical invention, and we shall ever be grateful to the discoverer of fire, the inventor of the electric dynamo, and the perfecter of hollandaise sauce. But there are also momentous social inventions. Indeed, as society becomes more affluent, these may become increasingly vital. The 4-day week is precisely such a social invention." The economist who wrote these words was no other than Paul Samuelson, considered by all economists as the father of modern economics. He won the Nobel Prize in 1970, and in that same year, he wrote the foreword of a book called 4 Days, 40 Hours, who was describing this new and radical management practice called the 4-day week, at the time implemented in the US by more than 30 firms through what was called the compressed work week, for 40 hours in 4 days. Paul Samuelson, the father of modern economics, called the 4-day week a momentous social invention and compared it to language. This is precisely my take, my view of the 4-day work week, not as a partisan policy or a win for the labor movement, but as a momentous social invention, a better way to organize economic activity in the 21st century. Now, we have to start with an important distinction. The book in the 1970s and most of the news that you hear about talk about the 4-day work week as a management practice implemented by firms to improve their businesses. Firms that have experimented with a 4-day work week find that workers come more rested, they become more productive, better able to solve problems, make fewer errors and mistakes, reduces absenteeism and labor turnover and all its costs, and it makes the business better. My proposal is different. I propose it what economists call a macroeconomic policy, a top-down policy implemented to the entire economy through legislation over a period of 4 to 6 years. And the idea is simple. It's to coordinate all economic activity that currently occurs over the 5 days into 4, Monday to Thursday, coordinate, so office jobs, banks, stock markets, universities, coordinate all economic activity that occurs over the weekend in 3 days, Friday to Sunday. And there is a lot of economic activity that occurs continuously throughout the week in industries, key industries, hospitals, but also pubs, restaurants, hospitality, hotels. These would still occur over 7 days, but the standard work week of workers would just be 4. When we talk about the management practice, the benefits of the 4-day work week stay within the firm and the worker. I think that the wider benefits of the 4-day working week to the society come precisely because of this coordination of everyone coordinating on this 4+3. Now, I know that when you look at this the first time, it just sounds alien, unnatural, but there's really nothing biological or theological or astrological about working 4 days. The working week is a social, political, economic construct. In the 19th century, people worked 6 days a week and rested on Sunday. And it was in 1908 that the first firm started adopting this radical and new management practice called a 5-day work week. The most notable was Henry Ford, that one of the greatest entrepreneurs of all time, that implemented in his factories in 1926. In 1929, still, despite Henry Ford's weight, only 5% of the US workforce was on the 5-day week. It moved from the management practice to the macroeconomy in June 1938 with the approval of the Fair Labor Standards Act. A key part of the New Deal, it wasn't implemented to all firms, but to a group of firms, the larger firms doing interstate commerce, and it gave them 2 years to implement the 5-day, 40-hour week that became binding in 1940s. Now, it only expanded in the following decades to reach other corners of the economy. Now, there is a lot of value in studying history because the criticisms that you hear today about the 4-day work week are very similar to the criticisms that you hear then about the 5-day work week. In 1936, the president of the Brookings Institute, an influential US think tank, Harold Moulton, wrote, "A shorter work week would prove nothing short of a calamity to the wage earners of the country." Very similar to what you read in the pages of the Telegraph these days. If any government were sufficiently crazy enough to try, it would simply turn the deep recession we already face into a complete catastrophe. Now, what is amazing about studying this period is that once the 5-day work week was implemented, all these criticisms disappeared. No one wanted to go back to how things were. And not just that, the critics disappeared and gave rise to the first visionaries of the 4-day work week. The most notable one was Republican Vice President Richard Nixon, who said the 4-day working week will be coming soon. Why? Once it was implemented, the critics disappeared and gave rise to the first visionaries of the 4-day work week? Because people realized after it was implemented that it was a better way to organize economic activity in the 20th century. And for me, it's very clear, and that's the view I explain in the book, that right now, the 4-day work week is a better way to organize economic activity in the 21st century. Think about it. In 80 years, everything in societies have changed. The technologies we use, the types of jobs we do, the speed in which we communicate, the demographics, the length of our lives, the number of years that we study, the structure of the family and the nature of our social interactions, everything has changed. And we still think that 5 is that ideal number, as if it was a constant in mathematics or physics. Now, I'm going to present 8 powerful economic reasons for the 4-day work week, and I'm going to organize them. I'm going to enlist the help of 4 of the greatest political economists in history, and each one torchbearer of particular ideologies that view the economy in a different way. So under John Maynard Keynes, reason number 1, because it's possible. The choice as societies of how much we work is exactly that, is a choice. It's not a law of economics. Reason number 2, because it will fuel the economy through the demand for leisure industries. To consume, we need money, but we also need time. It's in our free time that we feel our needs, and in our free time that we spend more money. The 4-day week will boost the demand for entertainment, tourism, culture, hospitality, many leisure industries. Joseph Schumpeter, the prophet of innovation, reason number 3, because it will increase productivity. That's why firms are implementing the 4-day working week as a management practice. And reason number 4, because it will unleash the potential of a vast talent pool of innovators. The seed of the deepest innovation is planted with time, not with money. The greatest examples is again Henry Ford. He spent 3 years building his car with internal combustion engine while having a 6-day job in one of Thomas Edison's electricity plants. He worked every night and all of Saturday night building his car. He became Henry Ford, not because of what he did in his day job, but what he did in his leisure time. And like him, countless numbers of inventors, entrepreneurs, writers, artists, that had a day job and became known for what they did in their leisure time, and that's where they contributed to our economies and to our societies. Karl Marx, reason number 5, because it will reduce technological unemployment, the unemployment that arises by the introduction of labor-saving technologies. Reason number 6, because it will raise wages and reduce inequality. And Friedrich von Hayek, one of the figures of classical liberalism, reason number 7, because it will give people more freedom to choose what to do with their time. People will be freer to work more on their 4-day work week if they want to, than they are currently free to work less if they want to. And reason number 8, because it will reconcile a polarized society and crush populist movements that pose the biggest downside risk to our economies. Now, all these economists, they are torchbearers of particular ideologies. They didn't agree on many things. They didn't agree on how the economy adjusts, and they valued different things. But this is exactly my view of the 4-day working week as a social innovation, is that whether you are conservative or liberal or progressive or Marxist, there are reasons that speak to you. And I do think we can all unite behind the 4-day work week. Now, I explained why I think it's a better way to organize economic activity in the 21st century, but we have to weigh these benefits of the 4-day working week against the costs. And the cost of implementing come because it's disruptive, because we'll have to do things in a different way. And in particular, the hardest the adjustment is how do firms in the private sector are going to adjust to suddenly having people working less hours. And let me start with one view, which is very accounting, is if people work 80% of the time, they should earn 20% less. It's thinking about wage cuts as the adjustment. And this actually has a name. This is part-time work, which already 25% of workers in the UK have and accept, and in Netherlands, for instance, is 50%. But for the majority of workers, I think we can avoid, because there's at least 7 other forms in which firms can adjust. Most importantly, and I really have to highlight this, time is an adjustment. Economies are not static, they are dynamic, and wages are constantly growing. Before the pandemic in the UK, they were growing at 4% a year. This means if the year prior to the implementation and the year after the implementation, firms and workers agree on no wage increases, that's already 8 percentage points out of the 20 necessary. If you think about a phased implementation of the 4-day working week, by giving, instead of wage increases every year, you just give an extra Friday per month, then over a period of 5 years, you would have implemented the 4-day working week with very little disruption. But this is even abstracting for the large increases in productivity and the reduction in costs that firm after firm that have implemented have found. But still then, some occupations, you might not have such a large increases in productivity needed, but you can, if you increase half an hour or 1 hour in the remaining days, that already takes care of 1/4 to 1/2 of the adjustment. Adding a few holidays, fewer holidays, because now you only need 4 days to make up a week, then you also have gains there. And there's, of course, firms that do have to hire more workers. They can increase prices. There are many firms who can just make this investment through the reduction in profits, and there's government subsidies to be used with much moderation, but it is possible. And the point here is that one size does not fit all. The economy, the jobs that we do are all very different. And it's not that we should be looking for one type of adjustment for a job. It's a multitude of adjustments exactly to make it less disruptive. Giving it 4 to 6 years for associations to study the best way to implement would surely reduce this disruption that would create. I think the benefits of the 4-day working week are very high, and right now the disruption costs of implementing are very low. We only need courage to do it. Thank you.